The gospel calls us to the question. And someone asked Jesus, "Lord, will only a few people be saved?" That becomes our question in faith. There's a humorous story that my parents used to do with one another. And the way the story goes is my father would say, "Okay, when I've died and gone to the gates of heaven, I meet St. Peter, and St. Peter says, 'Okay, welcome, but you can't come in until you finish putting a line on the ground with a piece of chalk for every sin you've committed. So here's the piece of chalk, and begin." And you step back behind that line and just keep going with the piece of chalk. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So my dad's working it, and all of a sudden he sees my mother flying up to the gates of heaven. The gates of heaven are opening wide. He goes up to St. Peter and says, "How can she come in and I'm still out here?" And St. Peter says, "B's just coming for another piece of chalk." And they would tell that on each other. Well, in many ways, that little humorous moment is really a statement, because the invitation within the sacrament of marriage is that you are bringing your spouse to heaven. So my mother and father knew very well that it was their prayer life together, it was their love life together, it was their sharing in faith together that would bring them to the gates of heaven, whether there was a piece of chalk waiting for them or not, okay? And the invitation is the same really for each and every one of us, whether we're single, divorced, married, young, older, and older. Doesn't matter. That invitation is still ours, and it's about salvation in the end. It's about allowing the Lord to work in our lives such that we will know He is calling us to heaven, to be with Him forever. I mean, that's the good news. That's why He died on the cross, to say to us, "I love you so much, I'm willing to give my life for you, and I invite you into that same kind of love to give your life for each other, so that you will share life eternal with me." That's why He came. He loves us that much, and He invites us to be that kind of person who hears the call to salvation and is willing to risk themselves for another to be able to bring them to heaven. That's a disciple, by the way. A disciple is someone who knows God so much, who loves God so much, who's experienced God's love, who's willing to serve God and willing to witness to God. And it begins in the home. Husband and wives, brothers and sisters, parents, children, both ways. And so the kids out there, the invitation is for you to image the love of Jesus Christ to your brothers and sisters. And especially to image the love of Jesus Christ to your parents. And for each of us, whether we're single and our spouse may be in heaven, or we have our spouse seated next to us, or we're praying real hard for our spouse because they're not here right now, either way, that's still the same invitation for each of us. In a very real way, this is the moment that Jesus shares with us His tremendous love. Each of the sacraments are love moments of God, of course, but this moment is the moment when Jesus offers Himself to us in His body and His blood. And so as we pray the prayer over the altar, and you have a wonderful pastor whom we're going to install in a moment, as you pray at the altar, we pray that the bread and the wine are truly changed into His body and blood. And it is his body and blood that becomes a part of our body and blood. And we become one with him, and we get a taste of heaven. It's really powerful. It's really a gift for us, and meant to give us the strength we need in faith and hope and love to be able to love one another, to love God with our whole heart and soul and mind and strength. That's the gift. Father Emmanuel, I'm calling to be your pastor. And I have invited him in service to minister to you and to be assigned to you of the invitation Jesus is giving to each of us to live in faith, to live in hope, and to live in love, that we share in the promise of being with Jesus forever in paradise, in heaven. That's really the invitation. And that's who he's called to be now as your pastor. There'll be a moment in which he will declare the creed with you, and that's his commitment of faith. And then he will make an oath of fidelity to the Holy Father, to me, to you, and to the church. And then we'll sign the documents. And as he signs the documents, he's signing the documents in a way that enables him to truly say yes to the invitation I've given him as your pastor, but also saying yes to Jesus Christ and his own personal love of Jesus Christ and his sharing in that love. And of course, once we finish him signing those documents, he has truly signed his life away to you, each of you. And so, Father Emmanuel, come forward.